Welcome to the Clarence-Rockland Guide. I'm Derrick Scott. Clarence-Rockland is an area that loves live music as a spectator and also as a performer. We're very fortunate to have a number of musicians that live in and around Clarence-Rockland, including our guest, not only a musician, also a former festival organizer. It's Eric Michael Hawks. Welcome to the Clarence-Rockland Guide, Eric.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's go on a journey on your musical career. When did you get the music bug? What age?
Oh, man. I was just a kid and listening to my dad's music. Gordon Lightfoot was probably the guy that did it for me as a songwriter and a guitar player. And all those late 50s, early 60s, the Bobby Vinton, the Roy Orbison, Elvis Presley. And I still listen to it to this day. On the country music side, we had Patsy Cline, but country music wasn't really big around the house, surprisingly enough.
Was rock and roll and oldies more the music that your parents listened to?
Yeah, the early Beatles before they got the long hair, and I don't know, it was just that era that was still living with my parents when I was a kid.
Do you agree that parents hand down their music to their children?
Yeah, and I do it to my daughter and my children, and my daughter will correct me on lyrics. If I'm singing, she'll tell me, you're singing it wrong, and she's 13 years old and she knows all the Willie Nelson songs and everything, and her mother says I'm corrupting the children.
When did you start playing music?
I was very young. I started playing drums actually. I was about 12 or 13 years old, and I was playing in taverns where I had to wait outside until it was time to play. And then during the break, I had to wait outside, and the owner would have to come and put me on stage again with the band. And that's how I started. I started in rock and roll and eventually progressed.
Were your parents okay with you playing drums?
They were patient.
They were patient.
Oh, very patient. And, you know, when you're pounding some Led Zeppelin in your room, it'll drive anybody crazy.
Do you remember your first gig, even at the age of 12, when you were playing drums in area taverns? Where was it?
I remember the first place I played was actually the Sarsfield Tavern back in the early 90s. And one of our first shows was, well, that was the first one. Then we played in Navan. And as a kid, I remember it was a scene out of a Burt Reynolds movie. A bar fight started. Everyone fought in that place,
no.
Just like in the movies.
Did you get involved? Be honest.
No, I was outside. Back then I was smoking cigarettes and, hey, Mom. And I was outside smoking, and then the whole place lit up and people were dragging each other outside. It dragged out outside, inside. But then it was like somebody rang the bell. Everyone picked each other up and we finished the night like nothing happened. It's weird, never seen that before or since.
So you started off with playing drums, and when did you transition into playing guitar? Because I know you, and I think a number of people in Clarence-Rockland know you for your guitar.
Yeah. Well, it's very hard to play around the campfire with a drum set. And I don't know, and I'll go back to, you know, those people like Gordon Lightfoot that really influenced me. And I just picked up the guitar and I never left it, you know, and started playing, and people, hey, your voice sounds pretty good, but you shouldn't be singing rock. You don't have the voice for that. And with rock music, I kind of, when the times change, when grunge came along. I didn't get into it, and I wanted to know where rock came from. And that's when you hear that old blues music, and then you hear that Buck Owens music, and the Waylon Jennings, and the Merle Haggard, all the old country music, and that really struck a chord. And people like Rambling Jack Elliott, that flat picking, you know, I hunted that sound, and I put that in my music. So when I was done with the drums, I kind of evolved into a folk singer. Me and the guitar with the harmonica, singing the Bob Dylan stuff, the Christofferson stuff, and Rambling Jack and James Taylor, and then we evolved.
Don't you find that country music, the folk singers, the songwriting, it really tells a story instantly, where compared to a lot of newer music, you need to read between the lines. Do you not find that music back then, it was simpler and you knew what the message was and you could almost see it as you heard it?
Yeah. Back in the old days, singers were individuals. If I would have came along on the scene, let's say in the 60s, and I tried to sound like Merle Haggard, the producer would stop me and say, this town's already got a Merle Haggard. What they don't have is a Air Michael Hawks, and you better find that person. Where today's music, it's like, we have a winning recipe and let's duplicate it until people get tired, and then we'll find something else to, and of course, the lyrics back then was gold. The lyrics were more important than the music, where today it's the beat that drives the music. You can basically say anything on stage or on record. People are not paying as much attention to it.
From drums to guitar to performing, and then writing songs and recording CDs. Mm-hmm. Where did you get your inspiration from right at the beginning to start writing your own material?
Well, playing live, and then I had, you know, various country music bands and Double Odd Buck, and people have been on me to, you know, you should start recording an album. And the thing is, since, I don't know, I was in 7th grade, and I still have all the, I must have, if I have 15 binders or 20 binders of lyrics I was writing. I was a daydreamer in school, and my teachers would let me slide because I was so creative, and a lot of them wanted to read what I was writing. I was not a musician back then, but I would just write, and I must have thousands of stuff that I wrote. And then when I started playing music, well, it all kind of started making sense. And then I started driving. I used to be a long-haul truck driver, so I went as far west as Vancouver. I went to the Maritimes, been as far south as Texas, all along the eastern seaboard.
It was you and your thoughts, right?
My thoughts, that's all you have to do, or else you're going to go crazy. And I think I might have went crazy along the way, but that's what I would do. I would drive, and I would keep a notepad on my right leg, and I would write. Probably not the safest thing I've done, but you know, that's what I would do. Just capture the moment and the feeling.
When did you release your first CD, Eric?
Oh man, that must have been 2011. I don't know.
Where did you record it?
I recorded it in with Bobby Lalonde.
Okay.
I called Bobby, and you know, it was an honor because Bobby doesn't take anybody, and he really liked the stuff I was writing, because as a songwriter, you're always kind of, is this stuff any good, you know? You kind of hard on yourself, and he really liked it. And he says, Eric, we can do a a good product here, and he got some really great pickers. Steve Petico, I play with him all the time now, but he played with Merle Haggard and Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton, and then we had the guys from Patrick Normand's band to come down, and Bobby played some fiddle, and Bobby was a legend in these parts, and and the big song on the album, probably the song I'm most known for, is Whiskey Drinking Cowboy, and that's one song that almost didn't make the album. We already had the songs, and while we were in pre-production, I kind of wrote it on a whim and brought it to him. I said, "What do you think?" He says, "Man, we should open that album with that song." I said, "Really?" And that's what we did, and it's been good to me ever since.
How many CDs have you released in total?
2. So I did that one with Bobby, and then a few years later, I decided to take a chance, and I made some contacts in Nashville, and we decided to go to the Sound Emporium in Music Row, where Cowboy Jack Clement once owned that record studio. Cowboy Jack was probably the first guy that recorded Johnny Cash at Sun Records, and one of the first guys to record Elvis and Jerry Lee, and the $1 Million Quartet. And so we found that studio. It's one of the only old studios that's not a museum, that is still active today. And that's where the soundtrack for Smokey and the Bandit was recorded. The Gambler by Kenny Rogers was recorded there, and even Taylor Swift recorded her first album in that studio.
Did you feel the vibe when you were there, Eric?
Yeah, big time. Because I go to Nashville about once or twice a year. And it's one thing to be there as a tourist, and it's another when you're in the car going to the studio, realizing, man, I'm going to work, and it was really something.
What's next for Eric Michael Hawks? Another CD, or are you taking a break from music?
I'm retired. Just kidding. No. I'm writing the next album. I've been writing it for a while. I want to make sure. I want it to change this, not the sound, but a little bit of the vibe, a little bit. But I don't want to lose the winning recipe for me. I got a sound, and I got to respect it. But I want to be sure I'm ready when I go in, and I'm talking with my producer all the time, and I'd like to bring some guests on that album, people that I've met, and hopefully maybe next year, maybe.
Do you still have a notepad? Do you still write down ideas even today?
Yeah, I never go to bed without my notepad, because sometimes I'll wake up, and if I don't put it down, it'll be gone forever. And but now I mostly use my iPhone. I just use the notes, and I had to upgrade a few phones because of that, because it's full of ideas and stuff like that.
It's interesting how you talk about technology with jotting down notes on your iPhone, but you also make reference to legends like Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley. So it's a combination of back then and what's popular and what's modern today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you got to take it all in. I'm influenced by everything that's good to me, and I just roll with it.
Eric Michael Hawks, always a pleasure chatting, and best of luck. Looking forward to new music from Eric Michael Hawks within the next 2 years.
Oh yeah, there should be something out there by then. Yep.